The notification lit up my phone at 9:47 p.m., and I knew before I even looked that it would ruin everything. We're using her cabin all summer. My cousin Becca's message sat at the top of the family group chat, complete with 3 sun emojis and a champagne glass. Below it, a cascade of responses flooded in. Mom's enthusiastic, what a wonderful idea. Uncle Derek's, about time that place got some use. My brothers, can't wait. Been too long since we all got together. I sat on my apartment floor, back against the couch, staring at the screen as the messages multiplied. 23 people in that chat. 23 people who apparently had no problem making plans for property that wasn't theirs. The cabin had been my grandmother's. She left it to me. Only me. The will was specific about that, and it had caused enough tension 3 years ago when she died. But time has a way of making people forget inconvenient details like ownership and boundaries and the word no. I typed and deleted 4 different responses. Each one felt either too aggressive or too weak. Finally, I wrote nothing. I just watched. Becca sent a photo next. It was a screenshot of a rental listing, but she'd crossed out the price and written "free for family" in neon pink letters. My cabin. My sanctuary. The place I'd spent every summer with Gran learning to identify birds by their calls, where we'd collected smooth stones from the creek and lined them up on the porch railing, where she taught me that sometimes the best company is your own thoughts and the wind through the pines. I'll coordinate everything, Becca continued. Derek, you bring the boat. Mom, you're on meals. This is going to be epic. I could smell the bergamot from my still steaming cup of tea, but it had gone bitter on my tongue. My apartment felt smaller suddenly, the walls pressing in. Outside, someone's car alarm wailed, then stopped. The silence afterward felt loaded, waiting. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a direct message from my mother. Olivia, don't be difficult about this. Family is important. Your grandmother would have wanted us all to enjoy the cabin together. That last sentence made my jaw clench, so hard I felt it in my temples. Gran had specifically not wanted that. She told me as much the summer before she died, sitting on that same porch with those same stones, her hand papery and cool in mine. They don't understand quiet, Livy, she'd said. They'll fill it with noise and their chaos, and their need to make everything about them. This place is for people who know how to listen. That's you. That's why it's yours. I'd had the locks changed within a month of inheriting the cabin. Good locks. The kind that required specific keys that I kept on a ring in my desk drawer. But I'd also done something else, something I hadn't told anyone about. Last fall, I'd hired a security company. Not the obvious kind with signs in the yard advertising their presence, but a discreet system. Cameras hidden in the eaves, in the porch light fixture, in the birdhouse near the front door. Motion sensors. And new smart locks that I could control from my phone that would alert me the moment anyone approached. The installer, a guy named Marcus with kind eyes and a veteran's tattoo on his forearm, had asked me if I was in danger. Just preparing, I'd told him. I have a feeling I might need to protect something eventually. He'd nodded like he understood, like he'd seen enough of the world to know that sometimes family is exactly what you need protection from. Now, watching the chat explode with excitement, watching them plan their invasion of my space, I pulled up the security app on my phone. The cameras showed the cabin exactly as I'd left it 2 weeks ago. Peaceful, empty, the late spring evening casting long shadows across the porch. A deer moved through the frame, pausing to look directly at the camera before bounding away into the forest. Another message from Becca. We're thinking of heading up this Friday. Just 3 days away. Who's in? A chorus of affirmative responses. My Aunt Carol. My uncle and his new wife. Becca's husband and their 3 kids. My brother and his girlfriend. Cousin James, who I hadn't spoken to since he borrowed $2,000 5 years ago and never paid it back. Even my father, who'd been mostly absent from family events since the divorce, chimed in with "count me in." 14 people. Planning to descend on my cabin in 3 days. I stood up, my tea forgotten, and walked to my window. My reflection stared back at me from the darkened glass, my face pale, my dark hair loose around my shoulders. I looked like Gran in this light. Same sharp cheekbones, Same set to the mouth when displeased. The question wasn't whether I would let this happen. I wouldn't. The question was how to handle it, how to make them understand that this wasn't a family resource to be claimed, that my inheritance wasn't their vacation home, that no was a complete sentence. I could simply tell them no in the chat. But I already knew how that would go. I'd be the selfish one. The difficult one. The one who couldn't share. They'd guilt me, pressure me, make me the villain in their story, where they were just trying to bring the family together. Or I could let them think they were welcome. Let them make the drive. Let them pack their bags and coordinate their schedules and build up their expectations. Let them drive those 8 hours into the mountains, down the winding roads, past the scenic overlooks, through the small town with the one general store, up the private drive flanked by Douglas firs. Let them arrive at the door with their arms full of groceries and their heads full of plans. And then show them exactly what boundaries looked like. My hands were shaking slightly as I opened my laptop. The security system had more features than I'd fully explored. I pulled up the manual and started reading. Remote lock control, obviously. Camera access, yes. But there was more. An intercom system connected to outdoor speakers. The ability to control the lights. Even the option to display messages on a small screen Marcus had installed near the front door, disguised as a decorative address plaque. I spent the next 2 hours learning every feature, testing each one, making sure I understood exactly how it all worked. By midnight, I had a plan. By 1 a.m., I typed out a response to the family chat, my fingers steady now, my mind clear. That sounds like fun. I won't be able to make it up there myself, but the cabin is all yours. Have a wonderful time. The responses came immediately. Relief, gratitude, excitement. My mother sent a heart emoji. Becca sent 6. Uncle Derek said I was finally being reasonable. I smiled at my screen, but there was no warmth in it. 3 days later, I called in sick to work. Not entirely a lie. There was a tightness in my chest that felt almost like illness, anxiety-laced anticipation that made my morning coffee taste like metal. I set up my laptop on my kitchen table, positioned just right so I could see the screen clearly. The security app was open, showing 4 different camera angles of the cabin. At 11:13 a.m., I got the first motion alert. My heart kicked into a different rhythm as I clicked to the live feed. A caravan of 3 vehicles was making its way up the private drive, dust rising behind them in the late morning sun. I recognized Becca's white SUV in the lead, Uncle Derek's truck second, my brother's sedan bringing up the rear. They parked in a chaotic cluster near the porch, and I watched as doors opened and people emerged, stretching after the long drive, laughing, pointing at the cabin like they owned it. The kids ran immediately toward the creek, their voices carrying faintly through the camera's audio feed. Becca approached the front door first, her phone in hand. I watched her try the handle, still locked from when I'd left. She frowned, then called over her shoulder, "Liv must have locked it. Does anyone have a key?" A general murmur of confusion. My mother, climbing out of Derek's truck with a casserole dish in her hands, said something I couldn't quite hear. Becca tried the handle again, then knocked, as if I might be inside waiting to let them in. "Try under the mat," someone shouted. Becca lifted the welcome mat. Nothing there. She checked the nearby flower pots, the ledge above the door, all the obvious hiding places. The group began to cluster on the porch, their confusion growing, their laughter taking on an edge of nervousness. This was the moment. This was when I could still back down, unlock the door remotely, let them in, preserve the peace. This was my last chance to be the person they wanted me to be. Instead, I switched on the intercom. "Hello, everyone," I said, my voice projecting from the outdoor speakers, clear and calm. I Conceive arrived. They all froze. Becca's head whipped around, looking for me. My mother actually jumped slightly, nearly dropping her casserole. The kid stopped mid-run and stared up at the cabin. "Livy," Becca called out. "Where are you? Let us in. The door's locked." "Yes," I said. "It is." A pause. I watched them look at each other, trying to figure out what was happening. "The door is locked," I continued, "because this is my home. My private property, which none of you asked permission to use." My brother, Jake, stepped forward. Come on, Liv. Don't be like this. It's just for the summer. It's family. You're right, Jake. It is family. Which is why I'm disappointed that my own family thought it was acceptable to claim my property without asking. To make plans that involved something that belongs solely to me without ever once seeking my consent. The silence that followed was heavy enough that I could feel it even through the camera feed. My mother set down her casserole dish on the porch railing. Olivia Grant, she said, using my full name like I was a child being scolded. This is ridiculous. Your grandmother would be ashamed of. Don't. My voice came out sharper than I'd intended. Do not tell me what Gran would think. She left this cabin to me specifically because she knew I would respect it. She knew I wouldn't turn it into a party house or a free vacation rental. Becca's face had gone red. So what? We just drove 8 hours for nothing? You less think we were welcome. I let you assume you were welcome, I corrected. Because you didn't ask. You announced. You declared. You decided that my property was yours to use, and you expected me to just go along with it because saying no would make me the bad guy. Uncle Derek, who'd been quiet until now, crossed his arms. So you set us up. You let us drive all this way just to humiliate us. Something about his tone, the entitlement still dripping from every word, made my resolve harden into something unbreakable. No, Derek. I let you drive all this way to learn a lesson about boundaries, about respecting other people's property, about asking instead of taking. I watched my mother pick up her casserole dish again, her mouth pressed into a thin line. Fine. We'll leave. But don't expect to be welcome at family gatherings after this. You've made your choice. The threat hung in the air, and for a moment, just a moment, I felt the old familiar pull. The desire to smooth things over, to be accommodating, to sacrifice my own needs to keep everyone else happy. It was a feeling I'd carried my whole life, the weight of being the peacekeeper, the flexible one, the one who could always be counted on to yield. But then I remembered Gran's hand in mine, her voice saying, "This place is for people who know how to listen." I can live with that choice, I said quietly. They began to move then, gathering their things with aggressive movements, doors slamming, voices raised in indignation. The kids looked confused, uncertain. My mother wouldn't look at any of the cameras, her face turned away. Becca was crying angry tears, smearing mascara as she wiped at her eyes. Jake was the last to leave the porch. He looked directly at the camera hidden in the porch light, and for a second I thought he might say something. Instead, he just shook his head and walked away. I watched them load back into their vehicles, the process much less organized than their arrival had been. Watched them execute messy three-point turns in the gravel drive. Watched the caravan head back down the mountain, dust rising again in their wake. When the last car disappeared from view, when the only movement on the screen was the wind through the pine branches, I closed my laptop. My hands were trembling again, but not from fear or anger. From adrenaline, from the strange lightness that comes after you've finally stood your ground after years of bending. My phone was already buzzing with messages, the family chat exploding with outrage, my personal messages filling with accusations and guilt trips. I silenced them all. Then I stood, walked to my bedroom, and began to pack. I'd already requested the next 2 weeks off work months ago, planning to spend them at the cabin. Alone. In peace. Exactly as Gran had intended. I was halfway through filling my duffel bag when my phone rang. Not a text, an actual call. The screen showed a number I didn't recognize with a local area code, the area code for the mountain town near the cabin. I almost didn't answer. Then curiosity got the better of me. Hello. Hi, yes, is this Olivia Grant? A woman's voice, professional, with an edge of concern. Yes, speaking. This is Deputy Chun with the County Sheriff's Office. I'm calling because we've received a call about a potential break-in at a property registered to you. A cabin at 4452 Ridgeline Road. The caller reported seeing suspicious activity and possible vandalism. We're en route now, but I wanted to verify. Are you aware of anyone who should be at the property? My blood went cold. What kind of suspicious activity? The caller reported hearing what sounded like breaking glass and seeing someone attempting to force entry through a window. They're still on site. Ma'am, are you able to verify your current location? I pulled up the security cameras on my phone with shaking hands, my laptop still in the bedroom. The live feeds loaded slowly, buffering. Too slowly. I'm in Seattle, I said. About 8 hours away. But I have security cameras. I'm pulling up the feed now. The image resolved. My breath caught. The cabin's front window, the large picture window that looked out over the forest, was shattered. Glass glittered on the porch. And standing in the open doorframe, his silhouette dark against the cabin's interior, was someone I'd never seen before. A complete stranger was inside my grandmother's cabin, and I was 8 hours away with no way to stop whatever was about to happen next. Ma'am? Miss Grant, are you still there? Deputy Chen's voice pulled me back, but my eyes stayed locked on the screen. The stranger moved deeper into the cabin, disappearing from the front camera's view. I swiped frantically, pulling up the interior cameras, the living room, the kitchen, the hallway. There. A man, maybe mid-30s, wearing a dark jacket and jeans. He moved with purpose, not the hesitant shuffle of a typical burglar. He was looking for something specific. Yes, I'm here. There's someone inside right now. I can see him on my security feed. We're 3 minutes out. Stay on the line with me. Can you describe what you're seeing? I narrated as he moved through Grant's living room, his hands trailing over the furniture, pausing at the bookshelf. He pulled out a book, shook it, replaced it. Moved to the next one. My grandmother's collection of bird guides and poetry, being handled by a stranger's rough hands. He's searching for something, I said. Going through the books. Now wait. The man had stopped. He'd pulled his phone from his pocket and was looking at it, his face illuminated by the screen's glow. Then he did something that made my skin crawl. He looked directly up at the camera hidden in the smoke detector. And smiled. Deputy, he knows about the cameras. He's looking right at one. Units are pulling up now, Ms. Grant. Stay on the feed cut out. All of them, simultaneously. The app showed a spinning wheel, then an error message. Connection lost. The cameras just went offline, I said, my voice tight. He must have cut the power or disabled the system somehow. Officers are entering the property now. I need you to stay on the line. I paced my apartment, phone pressed to my ear, my other hand clenched into a fist. Minutes stretched like hours. I could hear Deputy Chen relaying information to someone else, radio chatter in the background, but nothing concrete. Nothing about whether they'd caught him, whether the cabin was okay, whether this nightmare was over or just beginning. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Ms. Grant, the suspect has fled the scene on foot into the forest. We have officers in pursuit. The cabin has been secured, but there is damage. The front window is broken, and it appears the electrical panel was tampered with. I'm going to need you to come up here as soon as possible to assess what, if anything, was taken. I'm leaving now, I said, already moving toward my bedroom, phone tucked between my shoulder and ear. I'll be there in 8 hours. Drive safely. I'll have an officer remain on site until you arrive. And Ms. Grant, we'll need to take your statement about the earlier incident with your family members. The timing is potentially relevant. My hands froze in the middle of pulling clothes from my dresser. You think my family had something to do with this? I'm not making any accusations. But we did pass 3 vehicles heading down the mountain about 40 minutes ago. They matched the description of cars that were seen at your property earlier. It's probably nothing, but we need to cover all bases. After we hung up, I stood in my bedroom, my packed duffel on the bed, and let that possibility settle over me. Could they have done this? Could my own family, angry and humiliated, have arranged for someone to break in? To vandalize the place? To teach me a lesson about refusing them? No. That was crazy. They were entitled and pushy, but they weren't criminals. They wouldn't. My phone buzzed. The family chat, which I'd silenced but not left. Against my better judgment, I looked. Becca. Hope you're happy, Olivia. You embarrassed us in front of the kids. This is what happens when you prioritize property over people. Uncle Derek. Don't come crying to us when you need something. You made it clear we're not family to you. My mother, I raised you better than this. And then, from a number I didn't have saved, a direct message. You should check on your cabin. Things happen to empty places in the mountains. Would be a shame if something happened to Gran's precious sanctuary. My blood turned to ice. I screenshot the message immediately, then called Deputy Chen back. I just received a threatening text. I said without preamble. I'm sending it to you now. 6 hours into the drive, as the landscape shifted from flat highways to rolling foothills, my phone rang again. This time it was a number I recognized, Marcus, the security installer. Ms. Grant, I got an alert that your system went offline. I've been trying to access it remotely, but someone did a number on it. They knew exactly where to cut to disable everything. This wasn't some random break-in. Whoever did this had knowledge of security systems. The police are already involved, I said, my hands tight on the steering wheel. Can you meet me up there? I'm about 2 hours out. Already on my way. I left an hour ago when I saw the alert. Ms. Grant, Olivia, I need you to prepare yourself. From what I can see in the system logs before it went dark, whoever did this spent at least 15 minutes inside. That's not a grab and run. That's a thorough search. Or a thorough trashing, I said quietly. Maybe. But my gut says they were looking for something. Any idea what? I thought about the man on the camera, the way he'd gone through the books so methodically. The way he'd smiled at the camera before cutting the feed, like he wanted me to know this was personal. No, I said. I have no idea. But that wasn't entirely true. There was something, a memory tugging at the edges of my mind. Gran, near the end, her hand gripping mine with surprising strength. There are things in that cabin that matter, Livy. Not to everyone. But to the right people, they'd matter very much. Keep them safe. Keep it all safe. I'd assumed she meant the memories. The physical space itself. But what if she'd meant something else? Something specific? The last 2 hours of the drive passed in a blur of mounting anxiety and wild speculation. By the time I turned onto the private drive, the sun was beginning its descent, casting everything in shades of amber and shadow. A sheriff's vehicle was parked near the porch, and I could see the shattered window even from a distance, the glass catching the fading light like scattered diamonds. Deputy Chen was waiting on the porch, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a kind face. Next to her stood a younger officer, his hand resting casually near his belt. Ms. Grant, she said as I climbed out of my car, my legs stiff from the drive. Thank you for coming so quickly. Up close, the damage looked worse. The window wasn't just broken, it had been completely smashed out, the frame splintered. Glass littered the porch, crunched under my boots as I approached. We weren't able to apprehend the suspect, Deputy Chen continued. He knew the forest too well, had an escape route planned. But we did find something interesting. She held up an evidence bag containing a phone. Not a smartphone, but an old flip phone, the kind you could buy with cash at any gas station. He dropped this in his rush to get away. We're working on pulling whatever information we can from it, but these burner phones don't give up much. No calls logged, no texts. But there was one number stored in the contacts. Just one. She showed me the screen. The number looked familiar, but I couldn't place it immediately. Do you recognize it? I shook my head slowly, then pulled out my own phone. Can I check something? I opened the family chat, clicked on the members list, started comparing numbers to the one on the burner phone. Not my mother. Not Becca. Not Jake or Derek or... I stopped. The number matched one contact exactly. Cousin James. The one who'd borrowed $2,000 and never paid it back. The one I hadn't spoken to in 5 years. The one who'd been so enthusiastic about coming up to the cabin for the summer. It's my cousin, I said, my voice hollow. James Pritchard. Deputy Chen's expression didn't change, but I saw something shift in her eyes. We'll need his full contact information. Address, phone number, place of employment if you have it. You think he hired someone to break in?
Why?
To punish me for not letting them stay.
Maybe.
Or maybe there was something else going on. You said your grandmother left this property to you specifically. Were there any disputes about the inheritance? Anyone who felt they should have received more. The memory came rushing back then, sharp and clear. The reading of the will. The lawyer's office with its wood paneling and leather chairs. The family gathered, expecting Gran's modest estate to be divided equally among her children and grandchildren. And then the revelation that the cabin, worth at least $500,000, probably more, was mine alone. James had been furious. He'd actually stood up, knocked his chair over. This is bullshit. I'm her grandson too. She can't just play favorites like this. The lawyer had been unmoved. Mrs. Grant was of completely sound mind when she made this will. Ms. Olivia Grant is the sole beneficiary of the property at 4452 Ridgeline Road, along with all structures and contents thereon. Contents thereon. At the time, I'd thought that was just legal language. The furniture, the dishes, the books. But what if it meant something more? There was tension, I admitted to Deputy Chin. James especially felt entitled to a share. But that was 3 years ago. Why come after now? People have long memories when money's involved. Can we go inside? I need you to look around, see if anything's missing or disturbed. I nodded, steeling myself. The cabin had always been my sanctuary, the one place that felt purely safe. Having it violated like this felt almost physical, like someone had reached into my chest and grabbed something vital. The interior was worse than I'd imagined. The intruder had been thorough. Books pulled from shelves and scattered across the floor. Kitchen cabinets standing open, contents rifled through. In Gran's bedroom, my bedroom now, the mattress had been pulled off the frame, the closet emptied, even the floorboards pried up in places. He was definitely looking for something specific, Deputy Chin observed. This is a methodical search, not random vandalism. Take your time, look carefully. Anything missing? I moved through the cabin in a daze, my boots crunching on broken glass and displaced objects. Gran's favorite coffee mug, the one with the chickadee painted on it, lay shattered on the kitchen floor. Her reading glasses, she'd had 3 pairs scattered around the cabin, were bent and broken on the couch. Small violations that felt enormous. But, as far as I could tell, nothing was actually missing. The TV was still mounted on the wall. Gran's modest jewelry box sat untouched on the dresser, her wedding ring and pearls still inside. Even the cash I kept in the kitchen drawer for emergencies, $200, was still there, crumpled but present. I don't think he took anything, I said finally. Which means he didn't find what he was looking for. Or he got interrupted before he could. Our response time was under 5 minutes from the call. Who called it in? Anonymous tip, called from a payphone at the general store in town. Woman's voice, wouldn't give a name. Just said she'd heard breaking glass and thought someone should check on the Grant cabin. A vehicle pulled up outside, Marcus's truck, dusty from the drive. He climbed out with a toolkit, his face grim when he saw the damage. Jesus, he said quietly. Olivia, I'm sorry. Let me see what I can do about getting your system back online. While he worked on the electrical panel and the security system, I stood in the middle of Gran's living room and tried to think. What could be here that someone would want badly enough to orchestrate a break-in? What could be valuable enough to justify this level of risk? My eyes fell on the bookshelf, or what remained of it. Gran's books scattered everywhere, their spines broken, pages bent. She'd been a voracious reader, especially in her later years when her legs got too weak for long walks in the forest. Bird guides, poetry collections, novels spanning decades, and I froze. There was one book I wasn't seeing. One specific book that had always sat on the top shelf, that Gran had handled carefully, that she'd sometimes take down and page through with an expression I could never quite read. It was old, leather-bound, with no title on the spine. I'd asked about it once when I was a teenager, and she'd smiled mysteriously. Family history, she'd said. Not the kind in official records, but the kind that matters more. Someday, it'll be yours to understand. I'd forgotten about it over the years, dismissed it as one of Gran's eccentric quirks. But now, seeing its absence among the scattered books, I felt a cold certainty settle in my stomach. Deputy Chin, I said. There's something missing.
A book.
Old, leather-bound, no title. It was always on the top shelf. Can you describe it in more detail? Approximate size, color, any identifying features? I closed my eyes, trying to remember. About the size of a hardcover novel, maybe a bit larger. Dark brown leather, worn at the edges. It had a leather cord wrapped around it to keep it closed. I never actually looked inside, but Gran treated it like it was important. Any idea what was in it? She said it was family history. I assumed it was just letters or genealogy notes or something. But if someone broke in specifically looking for it, I trailed off, the implications hitting me. Deputy, what if this wasn't about punishing me for locking them out? What if they were after that book all along? What if the whole summer at the cabin thing was just an excuse to get access? Deputy Chen's expression had shifted to one of intense interest. That would change the nature of this investigation significantly. Did anyone else know about this book? Did you ever mention it to family members? I thought back, trying to remember. Family gatherings, conversations, years of interactions. I don't think so. I'd honestly forgotten it existed until just now. But James used to come up here with his parents when Gran was alive. He would have seen it. He might have even known what was in it if Gran told him. Marcus appeared in the doorway, wiping his hands on a rag. Systems back online. Whoever cut it knew what they were doing, but they didn't damage it permanently. Your cameras are recording again. He paused, looking at my face. What did I miss? Possible motive, Deputy Chen said. Ms. Grant, I'm going to need you to come down to the station tomorrow to give a formal statement. And we'll be paying your cousin James a visit tonight. If he arranged this break-in, we'll find the connection. After they left, promising to have an officer patrol the area overnight, I stood in the destroyed cabin with Marcus. You shouldn't stay here alone, he said quietly. Not tonight. There's a motel in town, clean enough. Let me board up that window first, make sure the place is secure, then I'll follow you down. No, I said, surprising myself. I'm staying. This is my home. I'm not letting them chase me out of it. Them? Whoever they are. James or whoever he hired, or whoever else wants whatever's in that book. This is my place. Gran left it to me. I'm not running. Marcus studied me for a long moment, then nodded. All right, but I'm staying too. I'll sleep on the couch, keep an eye on things. And before you argue, I'm not asking permission. Call it part of the security service. I wanted to argue, to insist I was fine alone, but the truth was I felt shaken down to my bones. Having someone else in the cabin, someone I could trust, sounded better than I wanted to admit. Thank you, I said quietly. We spent the next 2 hours cleaning up the worst of the damage. Marcus boarded up the broken window with plywood he found in the shed. Gran had always kept the place well stocked with repair supplies. I swept up glass, reorganized books, tried to restore some sense of order to the chaos. Around midnight, Marcus fell asleep on the couch, his breathing steady and deep. I sat in Gran's reading chair, wrapped in the quilt she'd made, watching the security camera feeds on my phone. The cabin was quiet except for the familiar sounds of the forest at night, wind through pines, the distant hoot of an owl, the creek running over rocks. I should have been exhausted. 8 hours of driving, emotional devastation, physical labor cleaning up. But I was wired, my mind racing through possibilities and memories. What had been in that book? Why did it matter? And why now, after 3 years? My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You should have shared the cabin. Now you'll lose everything. Before I could respond or screenshot it, another message appeared. The book is just the beginning. Gran kept more secrets than you know. And some of us have been waiting a long time for our share. My hands were shaking as I took screenshots, as I forwarded them to Deputy Chen's email. Before I could do anything else, the security system chimed, motion detected at the edge of the property. I pulled up the camera feed with trembling fingers. The exterior camera showed the driveway, empty and still in the infrared night vision. I swiped to the next camera, the one covering the back of the cabin near the creek. There. A figure moving through the trees, just at the edge of the camera's range. Too far away to make out features, but definitely human. They were approaching slowly, carefully, like someone who knew the cameras were there and was trying to stay out of clear view. I stood frozen, my heart hammering. Should I wake Marcus? Call 911? The figure moved closer, and I could see now that they were carrying something, a backpack, maybe, or a bag of some kind. They stopped about 50 yards from the cabin, just barely visible in the camera's range. For a long moment, they just stood there, and I had the eerie sensation that they were looking directly at the cabin, maybe directly at the camera. Then they raised one hand, in what looked almost like a wave. My phone buzzed in my hand. Another text from the unknown number. Check the porch.
What?
I pulled up the front porch camera. Nothing. Just the boarded-up window, the scattered glass I hadn't managed to sweep up completely,
Wait.
There was something on the porch that hadn't been there before. A package, maybe, or a box. Something small and dark, placed directly in front of the door. Marcus, I said, my voice cutting through the quiet. Marcus, wake up. He was on his feet instantly, the reaction of someone trained for emergencies. What's wrong? Someone's outside. They just left something on the porch. He was at the window in 2 strides, peering out through the gap in the boards. I don't see anyone. They're at the tree line, back by the creek. I showed him the camera feed. The figure was still there, watching. And they left something on the front porch. Marcus's expression hardened. Stay here. Lock the door behind me. I'm going to check it out. No, wait. What if it's dangerous? What if it's exactly why you're staying inside? He pulled out his phone. I'm calling the sheriff's office. But I'm also going to look. Could be nothing. Could be something that helps identify who's doing this. He moved to the front door while I watched both him on the camera and the figure by the creek on my phone. The figure didn't move as Marcus emerged onto the porch, didn't run or approach. Just stood there, watching. Marcus crouched by the package. I could see now it was a small box, wrapped in brown paper. He examined it without touching, then pulled out his phone flashlight for a better look. Olivia, he called back. There's writing on it. Says, for Olivia Grant, from someone who knows the truth. A chill ran down my spine. Don't open it. Please don't open it. Wasn't planning to. But it doesn't look like an explosive device. No wires, no unusual weight. Feels like there's paper inside. Maybe a book. He stood up, looking toward the tree line. Your visitor is still there. I watched on the camera as Marcus walked to the edge of the porch, his posture tense, but not aggressive. Hey, he called out. You want to come out and have a conversation like an adult? Or are you going to keep playing games? The figure didn't respond. Didn't move. Just stood there in the infrared shadows, an unmoving presence that radiated menace despite the distance. Then slowly they raised their phone. A moment later, my phone buzzed again. Tell your guard dog to bring the package inside. You'll want to see what's in it before the police arrive. Trust me. They're texting me. I called to Marcus. They want us to bring it inside. Absolutely not. This stays outside until the sheriff's deputies can examine it properly. He was already dialing, phone to his ear. This is Marcus Wade at 4452 Ridgeline Road. We have an active trespasser on the property and a suspicious package. How far out are your nearest units? I couldn't hear the response, but Marcus's expression told me it wasn't good news. Understood. We'll stay inside and keep eyes on the situation. He backed toward the door, never taking his eyes off the tree line, and slipped inside. I locked it behind him. 15 minutes, he said grimly. Nearest patrol is on the other side of the county dealing with a domestic situation. They're still out there, I said, watching my phone. The figure hadn't moved. Just standing there. Watching.
Good.
Let them stand there until the police arrive. Marcus positioned himself by the window where he could see both the porch and the tree line. Did they say anything else? I showed him the texts. His jaw tightened as he read them. Someone who knows the truth, he read aloud. What truth? What the hell is going on here, Olivia? This is way beyond a family dispute over property. I don't know, I said, but even as I said it, I felt the weight of Gran's unspoken secrets pressing down on me. The mysterious book, the cryptic comments about things that mattered to the right people, her insistence that I keep it all safe. My phone buzzed. Another text. Your grandmother wasn't who you thought she was. The book proves it. And now it's gone, which means someone else has it. Someone who might not be as patient as I am. You need to know what you're protecting before they come back. Who are you? I typed back, my hands shaking. The response came immediately. Someone who cared about her. Someone who knows what she did and why it matters. Open the box, Olivia. You're running out of time. I looked at Marcus. They say there's something in the box I need to see. That whoever took the book might come back. It's a manipulation tactic. They want you scared and off balance, so you'll do what they want. But even as he said it, I could see doubt in his eyes. But they haven't tried to hurt us. They could have. They're armed. I can see something at their hip. Might be a gun. They could have approached when you were outside. But they didn't. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then, the deputies are 12 minutes out. If we're going to look at what's in that box, we do it carefully and we document everything. Photos, video, the works.
Deal?
I nodded.
Deal.
He went to the kitchen and returned with a pair of dishwashing gloves and a knife. Stay behind me. We approached the front door together. Through the boarded window, I could see the box sitting innocently on the porch, brown paper almost glowing in the porch light. Marcus unlocked the door slowly, gun drawn with his other hand. I hadn't even known he was armed. I have a concealed carry permit, he said quietly, seeing my expression. Old habits from the service. He brought the box inside, set it on the kitchen table, and we both stood staring at it. Up close, I could see the writing more clearly. My name in block letters, black marker. No postage, no return address. Just that message, from someone who knows the truth. Last chance to wait for the deputies, Marcus said. I shook my head. Open it. He used the knife to carefully cut the tape, then peeled back the paper wrapping. Inside was a plain cardboard box, the kind you might use for shipping. He opened the flaps. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a book. But not the leather-bound book I'd described. This one was newer, a hardcover journal with a marbled cover. And on top of it, a note written on yellowed paper in handwriting I recognized immediately. Gran's handwriting. My dearest Livy, it read. If you're reading this, then someone has taken the original book and someone else has given you this copy. I hoped you'd never need it, that the past would stay buried where it belongs. But some truths have a way of surfacing, no matter how deep you dig the grave. My hands trembled as I picked up the note, reading the rest. The cabin isn't just a family home. It was a way station. During the war, and after, I helped people disappear. People who needed to vanish, to become someone new. Some were running from the government. Some from criminals. Some from their own families. I kept records, names, dates, new identities. Insurance, I told myself. Protection against those who might want to silence the witnesses to their crimes. But insurance can become a target. If the wrong people know those records exist, they'll come for them. They'll come for you. The book that's always been on the shelf is a decoy. Important, yes, it contains some of the stories, some of the names. But the real records, the dangerous ones, are hidden. 3 locations, 3 parts of the whole truth. Find them before they do. Trust only those who give you pieces of the past. And Livy, my darling girl, I'm so sorry to leave you this burden. But you're strong enough to carry it. You always have been. With all my love, Gran.
P.S.
The first location is where we used to count the stones. Where the creek makes the bend. 15 paces upstream from the grandfather pine. Beneath the cairn I built the summer before you were born. The note ended there. I looked up at Marcus, my vision blurry with tears. Your grandmother was running an underground railroad, he said quietly. After the war. Apparently. I looked back at the journal in the box. And someone knows about it. Someone wants those records. The question is why?
And who?
Those names could be worth a fortune to the right buyer. Or they could be evidence of crimes that people thought were buried decades ago. Marcus pulled out his phone. The deputies need to know about this. This is bigger than a break-in. I picked up the journal carefully, opened to the first page. Gran's handwriting filled it, neat and precise. This is a copy of the most sensitive records. Names, dates, and locations. If you're reading this, the original has been compromised. Use this information carefully. Lives still depend on secrecy, even after all these years. What followed was a list. Dozens of names, maybe hundreds, with dates ranging from the 1950s through the early 2000s. Next to each name was another name, their new identity, I assumed. And locations. Cities, states, sometimes countries. My grandmother had been hiding people for over 50 years. Jesus Christ, Marcus breathed, reading over my shoulder. Olivia, some of these names, do you know who these people are? I scanned the list, and my blood ran cold. I recognized names from news stories, from history books, from FBI most wanted lists that had gone cold decades ago. A union organizer who'd supposedly died in a car accident in 1967. A witness to a mob killing who'd vanished before the trial in 1982. A whistleblower who'd exposed government corruption and then disappeared in 1995. All of them, according to this journal, had been given new identities and relocated by my grandmother. This is insane, I whispered. Gran was just a normal woman. She lived in the mountains, she watched birds, she read books. She wasn't some kind of underground operative. Maybe that was the point, Marcus said. Who would suspect a quiet widow in a cabin in the woods? It's the perfect cover. My phone buzzed. The figure in the trees had sent another message. Now you understand. Now you know why they want what your grandmother hid. The first book they took has enough information to be dangerous. But the complete records, all 3 pieces, those are worth killing for. Find them first. Or watch everything your grandmother built come crashing down, and everyone she saved be exposed. Before I could respond, headlights swept across the cabin. The sheriff's deputies had arrived. I looked back at the phone, at the camera showing the tree line. The figure was gone. Marcus, I said, my voice strange to my own ears. What if the person who took the original book wasn't James? What if it was someone else, someone who knows what these records are worth? And what if James and my family were just a distraction, a way to get me out of the cabin so the real theft could happen? Then we have 2 problems, Marcus said grimly. The person who has the first book and the person out there trying to help you. And we have no idea which one is more dangerous. The deputies knocked on the door, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. I looked at the journal in my hands, at Gran's careful handwriting listing decades of secrets. What do I do? I whispered. Marcus met my eyes. You trust the deputies with what you can afford to tell them. And then, when they're gone, we go to that creek, and we find what your grandmother hid. Because whoever's out there is right about one thing. You're running out of time. I opened the door to let the deputies in, the journal hidden under a dish towel on the counter. As I started to explain about the box and the mysterious figure, my phone buzzed one more time. I glanced at it, trying to be subtle. A new text from the unknown number, just 3 words that made my blood freeze. James is dead. The words on the screen didn't make sense. I read them again, then again, my brain refusing to process what my eyes were seeing. James is dead. Miss Grant. Deputy Chun had arrived with the patrol officers, her expression alert despite the late hour. Are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost. I held out my phone with a hand that had gone numb. She took it, read the message, and her entire demeanor shifted. She was instantly on her radio, her voice crisp and professional as she relayed information to dispatch. I need confirmation on the welfare of James Pritchard, last known address. She looked at me expectantly. I rattled off his address from memory, my voice sounding distant and hollow. The same apartment in Seattle where he'd lived 5 years ago when he'd asked to borrow that money. The same place he'd promised to pay me back from but never did. Dispatching units now. The voice on the radio crackled back. ETA 7 minutes. Deputy Chen's eyes were sharp as they fixed on me. When did you last have contact with James Pritchard? Years ago. 5 years. After the money thing, we just stopped talking. I looked at Marcus, who'd moved closer, a protective presence at my shoulder. But he was in the family chat. He was part of the group planning to come up here for the summer. And the break-in. We found his number on the burner phone. Deputy Chen pulled out her notepad. Ms. Grant, I need you to tell me everything that's happened tonight. Everything. Starting with that package. I should have told her the truth. All of it. The journal, Grand's secret operation, the decades of hidden identities and dangerous information. But something held me back. Maybe it was the weight of Grand's legacy. Maybe it was the fear of what would happen if law enforcement started digging into those old cases, exposing people who'd built new lives on the foundation of my grandmother's mercy. Or maybe it was simpler than that. Maybe I just needed to understand what I was dealing with before I unleashed consequences I couldn't control. The package had a journal inside, I said carefully. A copy of something my grandmother had written. Family history, genealogy notes, that kind of thing. And a note saying that someone had taken the original book from the cabin and I should be careful. It wasn't entirely a lie. Just not entirely the truth either. Deputy Chen's eyes narrowed slightly. Can I see this journal? Of course. I retrieved it from under the dish towel, my heart pounding. Marcus shot me a look that I couldn't quite read, but he didn't contradict me. Deputy Chen flipped through the pages, and I held my breath. Would she recognize the names? Understand what she was looking at? But she was skimming, not reading carefully, her attention divided between the journal and her radio, which was crackling with periodic updates. After a moment, she handed it back. I'll need to take this as evidence, she said, along with the box and wrapping paper. But given the message about your cousin, this investigation just became significantly more complex. Her radio crackled again. Deputy Chen, units on scene at the Pritchard address. Confirming, we have a 187. Victim matches the description. Appears to have been deceased for several hours. The room tilted. 187, even I knew that code from TV shows. Homicide. James is really dead? The words came out as a whisper. Someone killed him? We don't have confirmation of cause yet, Deputy Chen said, but her expression told me everything. Ms. Grant, I need you to think very carefully. Did James have any enemies that you know of? Anyone he might have been in conflict with? Besides me? The bitter laugh escaped before I could stop it. I don't know. We weren't close. He was always in some kind of trouble, money problems, gambling debts, get-rich-quick schemes that never panned out. But kill him? I can't imagine. My phone buzzed again. Everyone in the room tensed. I looked at the screen, my hands shaking so badly, I almost dropped it. He tried to sell the book. Found a buyer who promised him $50,000 for it. But he got greedy, tried to negotiate for more. The buyer didn't appreciate that. Now the book is gone, James is gone, and you're next on the list unless you find the other pieces first. I'm trying to help you, Olivia.
But you need to move fast.
The cairn by the creek. Go at first light. And come alone. I showed the message to Deputy Chen. She read it, her jaw tightening. You're not going anywhere alone, she said firmly. This has escalated beyond a property crime. Whoever is sending these messages is either the killer or an accomplice, and they're using you. Or they're telling the truth, Marcus interjected quietly. Olivia's grandmother left her something valuable enough to kill for. If these messages are accurate, there are 2 more pieces hidden somewhere. Whoever killed James has 1 piece. This mystery messenger claims to be helping, and Olivia is caught in the middle. Which is exactly why she needs protection, not encouragement to go treasure hunting in the woods at dawn. Deputy Chen turned to me. Ms. Grant, I understand this is your property, and you feel a responsibility to whatever your grandmother left you. But a man is dead. This is now a homicide investigation with clear threats to your safety. I'm recommending you leave the property until we can secure the scene and investigate further. No. The word came out stronger than I felt. This is my home. And whatever Gran left here, whatever she was protecting, I'm not running away from it. She trusted me with this. She chose me. She also didn't know someone would be murdered over it, Deputy Chen said, her voice gentler now. Olivia, may I call you Olivia? I understand loyalty to family. But your grandmother wouldn't want you dead to protect her secrets. Wouldn't she? I thought about Gran's note, her words about being strong enough to carry the burden. About trusting only those who gave me pieces of the past. About finding the locations before they did. She'd known this could be dangerous. She'd known, and she'd left it to me anyway. I'll stay, I said firmly. But I'll be careful. Marcus is here, you have patrols in the area, and I have security cameras covering every angle. I'll be safe. Deputy Chen looked like she wanted to argue, but another radio call interrupted. More information from the scene of James's death. She stepped away to take it, leaving me and Marcus standing in the wrecked kitchen with a journal full of dangerous secrets and a phone full of threatening messages. You should have told her everything, Marcus said quietly once we were alone. About what's really in that journal. About the names. I know. I looked down at the journal in my hands, at Gran's careful handwriting cataloging decades of hidden lives. But if I do that, if I turn this over to the authorities, what happens to all those people? Some of them are probably still alive, still living under the identities Gran gave them. Their families have no idea who they really are. And if this becomes public record, if it's part of a murder investigation, it destroys everything your grandmother built, exposes people who've been safe for decades. Marcus ran a hand through his hair. Christ, Olivia. This is impossible. You can't protect everyone. I have to try. I met his eyes. Gran chose me for a reason. She could have destroyed these records, burned them all, taken the secrets to her grave. But she didn't. She left them for me. That means she believed I could handle this, that I could keep the people she saved safe while dealing with whoever's after the information. Or it means she made a mistake. Left you holding a bomb that was always going to explode eventually. But his voice was gentle, without judgment. What do you want to do? I looked toward the window, toward the forest where the mysterious figure had stood watching. Where, according to Gran's note, the first of 3 hidden locations waited in a cairn by the creek. I go at first light, I said. Find what she left at the creek, before anyone else can. See what other information is hidden there. Deputy Chen said not to go alone. She said I shouldn't go alone. She didn't say I couldn't bring you. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Then he nodded. We go together. First light. But we document everything, and if we find something that proves who killed James, we turn it over immediately. Deal?
Deal.
Deputy Chen returned, her expression grim. Preliminary findings from the scene. James Pritchard was killed approximately 6 to 8 hours ago. Single gunshot wound to the head, execution style. His apartment was ransacked, similar to what happened here. And Olivia, there's something else you need to know. She pulled up a photo on her phone, showed it to me. It was a screenshot of a text message conversation. I recognized James's name at the top. We pulled this from his phone. He was in contact with someone calling themselves the Collector. They were negotiating the sale of what James called proof of witness protection program fraud dating back to the Cold War. The last message from the Collector, sent 3 hours before estimated time of death, says, I'll pay $100,000 for the book and all related records. Come alone to the following address. My stomach turned. He went to meet his killer. Almost certainly. And the Collector, whoever they are, now has the book that was stolen from your cabin. But according to the message thread, James claimed there were multiple pieces and he could acquire them all for the right price. Which means the Collector knows there's more to find. I finished. And they'll be looking for it. Which brings us back to my original recommendation. You need to leave. Let us handle this investigation. And let the Collector find what Gran hid? Let them expose all those people? I shook my head. Deputy Chen, I appreciate your concern. But those records, if they fall into the wrong hands, it's not just about money or historical curiosity. It's about real people living real lives who thought they were safe. Some of them might have enemies who are still looking for them after all these years. Some of them might have families who have no idea about their past. I can't just walk away. Deputy Chen studied me for a long moment. Then she sighed. You're as stubborn as your grandmother. She turned down our offer of protection 2 years ago. I straightened. What? After your grandfather died, we had reports of suspicious activity around this property. People watching the cabin, strangers asking questions in town. We offered her police protection, suggested she might want to relocate somewhere safer. She refused. said she could take care of herself, and she wasn't going anywhere. Deputy Chen's expression softened slightly. She was tougher than she looked, your gran. I respected that about her. You knew her? I was a rookie deputy when she first moved here full-time after your grandfather passed. That was almost 30 years ago. We had encounters over the years. She was always polite, always cooperative when we asked questions. But she never gave us straight answers about much. I always suspected she was hiding something. I just never imagined it was this big. The radio crackled again, more updates, more coordination between units. Deputy Chen had to step away to handle the logistics of a murder investigation that now spanned multiple counties. Marcus touched my elbow gently. You should try to rest. It'll be light in 4 hours, and if we're going to do this, you need to be sharp. How can I rest? James is dead. Someone murdered him over something Gran left me. And there's a killer out there who knows there are more pieces to find. Which is exactly why you need rest. Your grandmother survived doing this work for 50 years. She was careful, methodical, and smart. You need to be the same. He guided me toward the bedroom. I'll stay up, keep watch on the cameras. If anything moves out there, I'll know. I wanted to argue, but exhaustion was crashing over me in waves. The adrenaline that had kept me going through the long drive, the break-in, the revelations, was finally burning out. I felt hollowed out, shaky. Wake me if anything happens, I said. Anything at all. I will. Now go. I lay down on Gran's bed, my bed now, still fully clothed, and stared at the ceiling. The wooden beams overhead were the same ones I'd stared at as a child during summer visits, counting knots in the wood, making patterns from the grain. Gran would sit in the chair by the window, reading or knitting, her presence a quiet comfort that made the whole world feel safer. What would she think of all this? Of James dead, of killers hunting for her secrets, of me caught in the middle of something I didn't fully understand? But maybe I did understand, in a way. Gran had spent 50 years protecting people who needed protecting, giving them second chances when the world had decided they didn't deserve any. She'd risked her own safety, her own peace, to give strangers a future. And now she'd passed that responsibility to me, trusted me to finish what she'd started. I must have dozed off eventually, because when I opened my eyes again, gray pre-dawn, light was filtering through the window. I could hear Marcus moving around in the kitchen, the quiet clink of dishes. The smell of coffee drifted through the cabin. I sat up, my body stiff and aching. Every muscle protested as I stood, made my way to the bathroom. In the mirror, I looked haggard, dark circles under my eyes, my hair a tangled mess, my clothes rumpled from sleeping in them. But my eyes were clear, determined. Today I would go to the creek. I would find what Gran had hidden. And I would figure out how to protect her legacy and the people who depended on it remaining secret. Marcus handed me a cup of coffee when I emerged. Deputies patrol passed by twice during the night. No activity on the cameras. Whoever was watching last night is either gone or very good at staying hidden. Or waiting for us to go to the creek, I said, sipping the coffee. It was strong and hot, exactly what I needed. Could be a trap. Could be. Which is why I'm bringing this. He showed me a handgun, compact but serious looking, and why we're going to be very careful about how we approach. I wanted to protest the gun, to say it wasn't necessary, that we were just going for a walk in the woods to dig up whatever Gran had buried. But James was dead. Someone had executed him over a book. Pretending this wasn't dangerous would be stupid at best, fatal at worst. Okay, I said. Let's go. We left through the back door, Marcus leading the way with the confidence of someone who'd done tactical movement before. The forest was hushed in the early morning, the birds not yet awake, the air cool and damp with dew. Our boots made soft crunching sounds on the pine needle floor as we made our way toward the creek. I knew these woods by heart. Every summer of my childhood, Gran and I had walked these paths together. She taught me to identify trees by their bark, to spot animal tracks in soft earth, to move quietly so as not to startle the deer. We'd collected stones from the creek, smooth river rocks worn down by endless water, and arranged them on the porch railing like a museum display. "Where the creek makes the bend," Gran's note had said. 15 paces upstream from the grandfather pine. The bend was easy to find, a sharp curve where the creek wrapped around a massive boulder before continuing its path down the mountain. And the grandfather pine was unmistakable, a towering ponderosa that must have been 200 years old, its trunk thick enough that 3 people couldn't link hands around it. I paced out 15 steps upstream, Marcus covering me with his eyes constantly scanning the forest. The cairn was easy to spot once I knew where to look, a deliberate stack of stones partially hidden by ferns, old enough that moss had begun to grow on the north-facing side. "This is it," I said quietly. Marcus knelt beside it, examining the arrangement. "It's been here a while. Years, maybe decades. But see how these stones are stacked? That's intentional. Someone with skill built this." "Gran built it the summer before I was born," I said, remembering her note. She'd been planning this for over 30 years. Jesus. The long game. Marcus started carefully removing stones, setting each one aside in order. Whatever's under here, she wanted to make damn sure it would wait. About halfway down through the cairn, we hit something that wasn't stone. Marcus uncovered it carefully, a metal box, about the size of a large shoebox, sealed with what looked like waterproof tape that had partially deteriorated with age. My hands were shaking as I took it from him. The metal was cold, heavy with whatever was inside. I peeled away the old tape, flakes of it crumbling at my touch, and opened the lid. Inside was another journal, similar to the one from the mysterious package, but older, more worn. The pages were yellowed with age, but protected by plastic sleeves. And beneath the journal was something I didn't expect: photographs. Dozens of them, black and white and faded color, showing people I didn't recognize. Some were casual shots, people smiling at cameras. Others looked like surveillance photos, grainy and taken from a distance. I opened the journal carefully. Gran's handwriting again, but younger somehow. The letters formed with a steadier hand. July 15th, 1967. Name: Robert Kimmel, former identity: Thomas Reardon. Relocated to Portland under new documents. Reason for protection: witness systematic corruption in Chicago PD. 3 officers want him silenced. Contact: will check in monthly via coded messages in newspaper classifieds. I flipped through more pages. Each entry followed the same pattern: original name, new name, location, reason for hiding. But this journal had something the copy didn't: photographs attached to each entry. Pictures of the people Gran had helped, before and after their transformations. And in the margins, notes in her handwriting about their progress, their struggles, their successes in their new lives. "This is incredible," Marcus breathed, reading over my shoulder. "This isn't just a list. It's a complete record of every person she helped. With evidence. Evidence that could still destroy them," I said, looking at a photo of a young woman with a baby, dated 1973. The caption read, "Sarah, now living as Michelle Torres in Santa Fe with her daughter. Escaped abusive husband who has mafia connections. She's safe now. The baby is beautiful." That baby would be 50 years old now. Maybe with children of her own. Maybe a grandmother. Living her entire life not knowing her mother had once been someone else, had fled from danger with the help of a woman in a cabin in the mountains. I was so focused on the journal that I didn't hear the footsteps until Marcus grabbed my arm, pulling me down behind the boulder. "Someone's coming," he whispered, his hand on his gun. I listened. There. The crack of a branch, the rustle of disturbed ferns. Someone moving through the forest, trying to be quiet but not quite succeeding. My heart hammered against my ribs as I pressed myself against the cold stone of the boulder. Marcus peered around the edge, his body tense. Then, surprisingly, he relaxed slightly. "It's a woman," he whispered. "Older, maybe 60s. She's alone. That doesn't mean she's not dangerous." "No, but..." He stopped as a voice called out, strained and breathless. "Olivia Grant? Are you out here? Please, I need to talk to you. I'm not armed." I'm the one who's been sending the messages. I looked at Marcus. He shook his head, stay hidden. But something in the woman's voice, a note of desperation mixed with sincerity, made me hesitate. How do I know you're not working with a collector? I called back, not showing myself yet. Because the collector killed my son. The woman's voice broke.
Please.
I've been trying to protect you, trying to help you understand what you're dealing with. Your grandmother saved my life 45 years ago. I owe her everything. I won't let her legacy be destroyed by people who want to profit from suffering. My son. The words echoed in my mind, and suddenly pieces clicked together. I stood up slowly, Marcus hissing a warning behind me. The woman who stepped into view was exactly as Marcus had described, early 60s, with silver hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing hiking clothes that had seen better days. But it was her eyes that caught me. They were red-rimmed from crying, haunted by fresh grief. James was your son, I said quietly. She nodded, tears spilling down her weathered cheeks. I'm Linda Harmon. That's the name your grandmother gave me in 1979. Before that, I was Linda Pritchard. I kept my married name when I ran, thought it would help me hide. James was 5 years old when we disappeared. His father was, she stopped, her voice catching. His father was a dangerous man, connected to organized crime. When I found out what he really did, when I threatened to go to the police, he made it clear what would happen to me and James if I tried. So Gran helped you disappear, I said, the story taking shape in my mind. She gave us new identities, helped us relocate to Seattle. I raised James as a single mother, told him his father had died. He never knew the truth. He grew up safe, normal, free from his father's shadow. Linda's face crumpled. But I made a mistake. A few years ago, when James was going through one of his financial crises, I told him a little bit about our past. Not everything, but enough that he knew we'd been in witness protection of a sort, that there were records of people like us hidden by a woman in the mountains. My stomach sank, and he figured out it was Gran. Not at first, but after she died, after the will was read, and the family was talking about the cabin, James started asking questions. He was always looking for angles, for ways to make money. And when he realized that those records might be valuable, that there were people who would pay to know where witnesses had been hidden all these years. Linda's voice hardened. I tried to stop him. I warned him it was dangerous, that there were people out there who'd kill for that information. But he didn't believe me. He thought he was so clever that he could control the situation.
He stole the book, I said.
During the break-in.
No.
Linda shook her head. He hired someone to steal it, a man he knew from his gambling circles. But James was there too, hiding in the woods, making sure the job got done. I followed him.
I saw the whole thing.
I called in the break-in to the sheriff, hoping they'd catch him before things went too far. But they didn't, Marcus said quietly. And James made contact with the collector. Linda nodded, wiping her eyes roughly. I've been tracking certain people for years. People who have an interest in finding those who've been hidden. There's a network of them, bounty hunters essentially, but ones who work for criminals and corrupt officials. They track down witnesses who disappeared, people who escaped prosecution, anyone who might have information worth selling or silencing. The collector is one of them, maybe the most successful one. And James thought he could negotiate with a professional hunter. I said, the tragedy of it settling over me like a weight. He thought he was smart enough, slick enough. He wasn't. Linda's voice broke again. I tried to warn him. I sent him messages, tried to scare him into backing off. But he ignored me. And yesterday evening he went to meet the collector. I followed him, but I was too late. By the time I got there, he was... She couldn't finish the sentence. Silence fell over the forest, broken only by the gentle sound of the creek running over stones. I looked down at the journal in my hands, at the metal box filled with decades of carefully guarded secrets. You've been trying to help me, I said slowly. The package last night. The warnings. That was all you. I couldn't let the collector get all 3 pieces. Your grandmother trusted me with the knowledge that there were 3 locations, though she never told me where they were. Said it was safer that way, that if anyone ever came asking, I couldn't tell them what I didn't know. Linda took a step closer. But I knew she'd left instructions for you. I knew you'd find the first location eventually. I just needed to make sure you understood what you were looking for before the collector could get to you. The book James stole. That was piece one? Marcus asked. That was the decoy, Linda corrected. Important, yes, but not complete. It had names and basic information, but not the full records. Not the photographs, the detailed notes, the evidence. That's what makes these other pieces so dangerous. They're proof, not just lists. I looked at the journal in my hands, understanding dawning. This is piece two.
Yes.
And there's a third location somewhere. Your grandmother told me there were 3 parts to the whole truth, 3 pieces that together would give someone complete power over the lives of everyone she'd helped. Linda's eyes were intense on mine. The collector has piece 1. You have piece 2. Whoever gets piece 3 first controls everything. Do you know where it is? I asked.
No.
But I know the collector is looking. And I know they have resources I can't match, money, connections, people who owe them favors. They'll find it eventually. Unless you find it first. Marcus had been quiet, thinking. Now he spoke up. How do we know you're telling the truth? That you're not working with the collector, trying to get Olivia to lead you to the third piece. You don't, Linda said simply. You have to trust me. The same way your grandmother trusted me 45 years ago when I showed up at her door with a terrified little boy and nowhere else to turn. She looked at me, saw the truth, and made a choice to help. I'm asking you to do the same. I studied her face, looking for signs of deception. But all I saw was grief, exhaustion, and a desperate sincerity. This was a mother who'd just lost her son. A woman who'd lived under a false identity for decades. Someone who owed everything to my grandmother and was trying to repay that debt. Gran's note said to trust only those who give me pieces of the past, I said quietly. You've given me your past. Your story, your son, your debt to Gran. That's a piece I didn't have before. Linda's eyes filled with fresh tears. Your grandmother was one of the best people I've ever known. She saved my life and my son's life. And even though he threw that away in the end, I still owe her. I still need to protect what she built. Then help me find piece 3, I said, making the decision. Before the collector does. Marcus looked at me like I was crazy, but he didn't argue. Maybe he saw the same thing I did, that we didn't have better options, that time was running out, and that sometimes you had to take a leap of faith. Your grandmother didn't tell me where the third piece was, Linda said. But she did tell me something else. She said that the most important part was hidden where she felt most at peace. Where she could hear the voice of the one she loved most clearly. I turned those words over in my mind, thinking about Gran, about the places she'd loved. The cabin, obviously. The creek where we were standing. The forest she'd walked through every morning. But where had she felt most at peace? And then it hit me. The overlook. Marcus looked at me. What overlook? There's a place about a mile from here, up the ridge. It looks out over the valley, and you can see for miles on a clear day. Gran used to go there when she was sad or stressed or just needed to think. She said it was where she felt closest to Grandpa after he died, where she could talk to him and feel like he heard her. Where she could hear the voice of the one she loved most clearly, Linda echoed. That has to be it. But it's a mile of exposed trail, Marcus said, his tactical mind already working through the problems. If the collector has people watching, if they figure out where we're going, then we need to move fast and stay alert. I closed the metal box, securing the journal inside. We can't leave this here, but we can't take it back to the cabin either. Too obvious. I have a car hidden on an old logging road about half a mile from here, Linda said. We could secure it there for now. The collector doesn't know about me yet. They think I'm just Linda Harmon, a woman who's lived quietly in Seattle for decades. They don't know I'm connected to all this. Yet, Marcus said darkly. If they're as good as you say, they'll make the connection eventually. Which is why we need to move now, while we still have the element of surprise. Linda looked between us. I know I'm asking a lot. Asking you to trust a stranger, to put yourselves in danger for people you've never met. But if the collector gets all 3 pieces, hundreds of people will be exposed. Some will just have their past lives revealed, their families torn apart by secrets. But others will be killed. There are still people looking for some of the witnesses your grandmother hid, people with long memories and deep grudges. I thought about the woman in the photograph, about her daughter, who'd grown up safe and oblivious. About all the others in Grand's journals, living their peaceful lives, protected by an old woman's carefully guarded secrets. We'll get the third piece, I said. And then we'll figure out how to keep it safe. All of it. That's what Gran would have wanted. Linda nodded, relief washing over her face. Thank you. Thank you so much. We made our way to Linda's car, moving quickly but carefully through the forest. The vehicle was an old sedan, nondescript and dusty, hidden under branches and camouflage netting that suggested she'd been preparing for this kind of situation. Paranoid habits die hard, she said with a bitter smile. When you've spent 40 years looking over your shoulder, you don't stop just because time passes. We secured the metal box in the trunk, under a blanket and some camping gear. Then the three of us stood there in the early morning light, making plans. The Overlook Trail starts from the main road, about 3 miles from here by car, I said. But there's also a back way, an old path that hunters use. It's rougher, takes longer, but it's less exposed. Less exposed is better, Marcus said. We take the hunter's path. We drove in Linda's car, Marcus navigating while I sat in the back, my mind racing. The sun was fully up now, the forest bright with morning light that should have felt hopeful, but instead just made me feel exposed. Anyone could be watching. The collector could have people everywhere. The hunter's path started from an unmarked trailhead that you'd miss if you didn't know it was there. We parked the car out of sight and began the hike, moving single file with Marcus in front and Linda bringing up the rear. The trail was steep and overgrown in places, clearly not used much in recent years. My legs burned as we climbed, my breath coming harder. Beside me, Linda moved with surprising agility for a woman in her 60s, her breathing controlled and steady. You hike a lot, I observed during a brief rest. I walk everywhere. Never stay in one place too long. Another paranoid habit. She took a sip from a water bottle. For years after your grandmother helped me, I had nightmares about being found. About waking up to find my ex-husband standing over my bed, or coming home to find James gone. The fear never really goes away. You just learn to live with it. I'm sorry, I said, meaning it. For what happened to James.
For all of it.
Linda's eyes were distant. He was a good boy. Sweet, funny, full of life. But somewhere along the way, he learned that the world was something you could game, that rules were for other people. I tried to raise him right, but maybe some of his father came through after all. She blinked hard. I wanted to keep him from that life. That's why I ran. But in the end, he found his own way into danger anyway. We hiked in silence after that, the weight of her grief and my own confusion too heavy for words. The trail eventually leveled out, opening onto a ridge that ran along the mountainside. Through the trees, I caught glimpses of the valley below, distant and hazy in the morning light. We're close, I said. The overlook is just ahead. Marcus held up a hand, stopping us. Listen. We froze. At first, I heard nothing but the wind in the trees, the distant cry of a hawk. Then voices. Faint but distinct, coming from ahead of us on the trail. Someone's already at the overlook, Marcus whispered. My heart sank. The collector? Maybe. Or hikers. Could be innocent. But his hand had moved to his gun again, and his expression said he didn't believe in that possibility. We moved forward cautiously, staying off the main trail, using the trees for cover. The voices grew clearer as we approached. 2 men, arguing about something. Told you we should have come last night, one was saying. Now we're racing against time. If the girl finds it first. She won't, the second voice interrupted. She's soft, City raised. Her grandmother was tough, but this one? She'll crack under pressure. We just need to apply the right amount. My blood ran cold.
They were talking about me.
Marcus gestured for us to get down. We crouched behind a fallen log, peering through the undergrowth at the overlook clearing ahead. Two men stood near the edge of the cliff, both armed, both scanning the forest with the practiced alertness of professionals. How did they find this place? Linda whispered, her face pale. Same way we did, Marcus murmured back. They must have gotten more information from James before they killed him. Or they've been monitoring the cabin, saw us leave, followed at a distance. We need to get out of here, I said, already starting to edge backward. Regroup, figure out another approach. One of the men's phones rang, the sound cutting through the morning quiet. He answered it, listened, then spoke in a voice that carried clearly to our hiding spot. Understood. Yes, she's moving toward the overlook. Wait, you have eyes on her now? My blood froze. If they had eyes on me, that meant, it's a trap, Linda hissed. They knew we'd come here. They've been waiting. Marcus was already pulling us back, moving us away from the overlook as quickly and quietly as possible. But we'd only made it a few yards when a woman's voice called out from behind us. Stop right there, Miss Grant. We turned. A woman in her 40s stood on the trail, gun drawn, and pointed directly at me. She was professionally dressed despite the hiking setting, dark clothes, tactical gear, the bearing of someone military trained. I'm the collector, she said with a cold smile. And you're going to take me to the third piece. Right now. I don't know where it is, I said, which was true. I knew the overlook was the general location, but not specifically where Gran had hidden anything. Then you'd better figure it out. Because I have people at your cabin right now with Linda's complete file. One phone call from me, and her real identity gets sent to every criminal database in the country, including her ex-husband's organization. They've been looking for her for 45 years. Imagine their joy at finally finding her. Linda's face went white. You wouldn't. Try me. I've already killed one person this week. What's a few more? The collector's eyes were dead, emotionless. Now move. All of you. To the overlook. And Ms. Grant, I suggest you remember everything your grandmother ever told you about that place, because your friend's life depends on it. We had no choice. With the collector behind us and her men ahead, we were trapped. We walked to the overlook, my mind racing, trying to remember everything about this place. Gran used to sit on a particular rock, I remembered. Always the same one, a flat boulder near the edge that was worn smooth. She'd sit there for hours sometimes, just looking out over the valley, her lips moving in what I'd thought was prayer but now realized might have been something else. When we reached the clearing, the collector's two men secured Marcus and Linda, zip-tying their hands. The collector kept her gun on me. Start looking, she said. You have 10 minutes before I start shooting people. I moved to Gran's rock, my hands shaking. Where would she hide something here? The rock itself was solid, no cracks or crevices. I looked around it, under it, feeling desperately for any indication of a hiding spot. Nothing. 8 minutes left. Where she could hear the voice of the one she loved most clearly. I whispered to myself, repeating Linda's words. Gran would sit here talking to Grandpa, but how did that help me? Then I remembered Gran didn't just talk. She'd hum. Always the same song, an old tune from her youth that Grandpa used to sing to her. And she'd tap her fingers against the rock while she hummed, a rhythmic pattern that I'd unconsciously memorized from hundreds of summer mornings watching her. I placed my hand on the rock where hers had always rested and felt it, subtle grooves in the stone, so worn they were almost invisible. Not natural weathering. Deliberate marks forming a pattern. 5 minutes. I traced the pattern with my fingers, and something clicked. A section of the rock, no bigger than a brick, shifted slightly. It was a false panel, camouflaged perfectly but movable if you knew the trick. Inside the hollow was a waterproof bag. I pulled it out with trembling hands. Give it to me, the collector demanded.
No.
She raised her gun. I'll kill them all, starting with the old woman. And then you'll never know if this is everything, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. My grandmother was careful. There could be copies. There could be fail-safes. Kill us, and you'll spend the rest of your life wondering when the information will surface. The collector's eyes narrowed. What are you proposing? A trade. This piece for their safety. And for a guarantee, you destroy what you have. All of it. The pieces, the names, everything. These people have suffered enough. They deserve to stay hidden. You're not in a position to negotiate. Actually, I am. Because if you kill me, Deputy Chin knows about the journals. She has photographs of pages. She knows about the names. You kill us, and this becomes a police investigation that will expose everything you're trying to keep buried. I was bluffing, but my voice didn't waver. Let us go, destroy the records, and everyone walks away. Including you. For a long moment, the collector stared at me. Then, slowly, she lowered her gun. You're smarter than your cousin, she said.
Fine.
Give me the bag. I'll destroy it all. But if I ever hear a whisper about these records resurfacing, I'll come back. And next time, I won't be so generous. I handed over the bag. The collector took it, gestured to her men. They cut Marcus and Linda loose, then melted back into the forest with military precision. We stood there in silence as the sun climbed higher, none of us quite believing we were still alive. She'll destroy it, Linda said finally. The collector has a reputation. She keeps her word when she gives it. And if she doesn't? Marcus asked. Then I have copies, I admitted. Real ones this time, not bluffs. I photographed every page of the journal we found this morning. Uploaded them to a secure cloud account before we left for the Overlook. If anything happens to any of us, if those people are exposed, the files go to every major news organization in the country. The collector's operation would be destroyed. Linda actually laughed, a sound somewhere between relief and hysteria. Your grandmother would be proud. That's exactly the kind of insurance policy she would have created. We made our way back down the mountain slowly, exhausted and traumatized, but alive. At the cabin, Deputy Chin was waiting with more questions, but I had enough answers to satisfy her for now. James's death was ruled a professional hit, likely related to criminal activities. The investigation would continue, but without me as a suspect or a target. Over the following weeks, I watched the news carefully. Several high-profile cold cases were quietly closed. A few people appeared in witness protection programs, their old cases suddenly resolved. The collector, true to her word, was dismantling the network, destroying evidence, letting people stay hidden. Linda visited once more before disappearing again. I'm going to keep moving, she said. It's what I know. But thank you, Olivia. For everything. Marcus helped me repair the cabin, replace the window, restore order to the chaos. And one evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sun set over the mountains, he asked the question I'd been dreading. What are you going to do with the copies? The photographs you made? I pulled out my phone, opened the cloud account, and showed him. Then I deleted it, every file, every backup, every trace. Gran protected those people for 50 years, I said. The least I can do is let them stay protected. They deserve their peace. They've earned their second chances. And your family? They still think you're the villain in their story. I smiled, surprising myself. Let them think it. I know the truth. Gran knew I could handle this. She trusted me with her legacy, and I did what she would have wanted. That's enough. The cabin settled into silence around us. The forest sounds a gentle symphony. Gran stones still lined the porch railing, smooth and patient. Her chair sat empty by the window, but I could feel her presence in every corner, in every carefully chosen hiding place, in every life she'd touched. I'd protected her secrets. I'd honored her trust. And in doing so, I'd finally understood what she'd been trying to teach me all those summers ago, that sometimes the most important thing you can do is give someone the chance to start over, to be safe, to simply exist without fear. The cabin was mine now. Truly mine. Not just property, but responsibility, legacy, purpose. And I would guard it and the memories it held for as long as I lived.